It's nice to be with you all. And I'm at Audaria. Everything is fine here. And I have been able to complete the first draft of the book I've been writing for some time. And
Wow.
I've gone through the first section of it as well for a second time. So it's proceeding along at a pace that is faster than I had expected. So I'm sure
Nice.
we'll do it, later this year.
Well, it's pretty exciting with the book. Great. And you did the radio interview recently too.
I did a radio interview yesterday, recently, yeah. Did you
Yeah.
hear it?
Yeah, I did hear it. I was kind of wondering how that came about. I really liked it. It seemed like it covered a lot of ground.
The host for that is some type of a Christian priest
Huh.
who's been corresponding with me for about a year or more and listening to my lectures, and is very inspired by them and wants to get connected more deeply. And so apparently he has this radio show. I don't know how often it is, once a week maybe, or I really don't know. And he wanted me to be on it, so I said, okay. It's broadcast to 100 pretty wide circulation. And I thought it went well. I mean, he was a very favorable interviewer.
Yeah, I really liked his questions. I was like, oh, these are cool questions. They were good questions.
Very difficult for me, so I thought it went well.
Yeah, I really liked it. That was cool. Yeah. So a question. So Padmanabha Swami had a question, and he sent it in for whoever was hosting to ask. So his question is, what piece of advice would you give to a sadhaka who is not fully expert in feeling herself loved by other devotees, while she actually is, and because of this lacking, she is still looking for affection in a superficial way, looking for name, fame, etc. How could that person overcome this particular obstacle? That's his question.
Well, it sounds like the obstacle is the desire for pratishtha and recognition. And of course, it's important to point out how empty that is, how meaningless that is, how contradictory, if you will, to bhakti that is, where we seek to honor others, expect no honor for ourselves, give all honor to Bhagwan, and so on. And so I think that on the one hand, it's important to lay out very clearly how unbecoming such a desire is, to be very frank about it. Someone, maybe Raghunath Das Goswami, has said that the pratishtha, or the desire for recognition and distinction and so forth, is like the stool of pigs who eat the stool of others. So that's a very kind of a crude way of putting it, but I believe it was he who used that example to shed light on how unbecoming it is for devotees. In other paths of transcendental pursuit, it's obviously not as much emphasized in yoga or gyan, especially in a school where one thinks that one can become one in all respects with the absolute. But even there, of course, even in yoga and gyan, humility is considered to be a virtue. But it's very much underscored within bhakti. Speaking about humility, of course, it's more or less speaking about the opposite pride. But at the same time, Mars seems to be speaking about someone who has some type of a psychological issue, wherein they have a lack of self-esteem. And despite the fact that they are very much appreciated and they have many, many good qualities and other devotees like them and so on and so forth, they tend to not see themselves in that light and maybe overthink things and beat themselves up and so forth. So that's a psychological issue that a lot of people have, and it sounds like the devotee that Marsh is speaking about might have an issue like that, and there are, I think, surely a psychological methods and guidance that could help someone with that. It's a very prominent issue in the industrialized world, and a lot of women, I think, are troubled by it, perhaps more than men. So there's a lot of advice out there about that, and there are some devotees who probably have degrees in psychology who are familiar with that issue and have techniques and tools and so forth that can help such a person. So I would advise to get that type of help either through reading about it, getting consultation with someone. It's kind of a mental issue, a psychological issue that needs to be attended to, just like a physical ailment may need to be attended to, that I can better proceed with my practice. So it's not my field. I'm not an expert on that. I have experienced devotees who have that issue, and there definitely are some type of, besides the rationale of it explaining it's not really the fact, people like you, that doesn't seem to work. But there are some real good tools, I believe, to deal with that from the realm of psychology, modern psychology. So I would advise a person to take advantage of them, and perhaps in the best case scenario, find a devotee who has a degree in psychology and is practicing in that field to help one. This is, of course, it's not bhakti to go to the doctor. It's not bhakti to work on your psychology either. But it may be something we need to do to help us pursue our bhakti, and we can look at it like that. But advice. I mean, otherwise, obviously, from the scriptural point of view, the texts are full of advices against pratishta and desire for distinction, adoration, fame, and so on and so forth. And probably with a person with a problem like that, you could quote them all day, and it may even be counterproductive given the way they interpret things psychologically. So kind of outside help would be something I'd recommend.
Okay. Yeah. So the next question is from Braj Bhumi.
I see a question has come on here.
Yeah, I see that.
About whether my voice
sound is breaking up for others.
Can everyone hear very, very well?
You're not breaking up for me, but maybe it would help if you were speaking louder, just a little bit. I don't know if that's a thing for everyone. I mean, Archana, can you?
It's not breaking up over here.
Okay.
Yeah, I can hear him pretty good from our end.
Okay. Maybe it's something with, wait, Yeah, maybe it's something maybe for you, Vijay Kumar, because it seems like other devotees are able to hear okay. Yeah. Maybe it's your internet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Your phone was used, but I don't seem to have it here. So,
Oh no, it's okay. I mean, it seems like I can just turn up my volume. It seems like it's okay for other devotees.
okay, next question.
Yeah. So Raj Bhumi?
Good morning, Guru Maharaj.
Morning.
So, a long time ago, you were speaking in one class about Lord Shiva being really important in having a really important role in Gaura Lila. And you didn't really say what that role was or elaborate at all, but you just said that it was very important and it was something that devotees should appreciate and
Uh-huh.
basically saying that he is someone that we honor.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Yeah.
was just curious if you could maybe give some more insight into what role he actually has.
It's mentioned in the Bhagavatam in the 11th canto in the verses that describe Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Shiva Nichnutam Sharanyam, that he appears along with Shiva and Brahma. So this is a reference to Brahma Haridas, which is the way in which Advaita Acharya identified Haridas. And therefore the Brahma, if you will, of that the Bhagavatam refers to is thought to be Haridas, and the Shiva is Advaita. So we speak of Advaita as Mahavishnu. Particular feature of Mahavishnu is a complicated theological figure, but this particular aspect of Mahavishnu is such that he is Vishnu, and Maha means Shiva, Mahadev. So sometimes we refer to him, Kavi Karnapur referred to him or identified him with Mahas, with whom, what's the term? It's not Mahasankarshan, it's I can't remember the term now, but anyway, it's the form of Shiva, who's not different from Mahavishnu. So obviously, Shiva, in this sense, as Advaita, is thought to be a combined form of Mahavishnu and Shiva, is very important. He brought Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to the world through his worship, and it's also thought that, I think I mentioned this in a recent lecture on Dvaita Saptami, that Advaita, who he received the deities of Madan Gopal in Vrindavan, who then in a dream told him to give them to a Brahmin in Mathura, which he did and felt bereft. But then they appeared again in a dream and told him that he could find a picture that Vishaka had drawn of Krishna for Radharani in such place. And he went there and he found the picture. Of course, he took that back to Bengal, and I think it was when Madhavendra Puri came there, initiated him, and told him to get a corresponding picture of Radha drawn. And that's thought to be the origination then of the worship of Radha and Krishna within Gaudiya Vaishnavism. And of course, he brought Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is Radha and Krishna, two becoming one. That's another reason his name is called Advaita. He made the two one in the form of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So, just a few words about Advaita, who is the Shiva of Gaur Lila. It's very important. Of course, you know that, but you didn't perhaps know that you know that Advaita is important to the Bhakti. It also
Yeah,
has-
I did think that maybe that's what you meant, but I didn't want to just guess. So
Well, you were right. So glad to confirm that for you.
thank you.
Okay, so what's next? Kishore?
Haribo, Jai Guru Maharaj.
Good morning.
So a question came up for me in last night's Sandarbha class. We were talking about the manifestation of Krishna. And, I understand that the Swarup Shakti is kind of the outreach of mercy into our lives that brings Krishna into our life. But when Krishna manifests before a devotee, is that decision of manifesting Krishna's decision, the Swarup Shakti's decision, or somewhat of a mix of both?
Well, Bhakti is constituted of the Swarup Shakti of Krishna. So wherever Bhakti goes, Krishna has to go. He really doesn't have a choice in the matter. And the extent to which he actually makes his appearance and his presence palpable is considered to be a function of the Swarup Shakti. So, for example, in Bhava Bhakti, it's not that the Swarup Shakti isn't active in the life of the sadhaka. She is. Bhakti, again, is constituted of the Swarup Shakti. So as much as one actually comes under the influence of Bhakti, which is an interesting and important issue worth discussing for a moment, because we often distinguish, for example, between the passive varnashram and Bhakti. Bhakti steps on the head of varnashram and so on and so forth. And certainly it does. But what is meant then by our acharyas in terms of a bhakta being transcendent to the realm of karma, which is the realm of varnashram, is that they come completely under the angas of bhakti. So it's a very radical, if you will, lifestyle. There are many angas of bhakti. If we study them carefully, there are angas that pertain to speech, to action, to thought, and so it's supposed to be all have the power to be all-consuming of your psychological and biological self involved in bhakti under the influence of the Swarup Shakti. Failure to perform a particular anga of bhakti is not a defect within bhakti, as it would be within varnashram or within yoga or jnana and so forth. The reason being because each anga is powerful in and of itself. It's at least the primary angas. There are primary angas and there are sub-angas to them in the list of 64 angas given by Rupa Goswami. And there are more than 64 as well. There's another third mentioned in the Bhagavatam that are referred to. But at any rate, it's a very consuming lifestyle if properly understood. And while it's true that one may not perform all of them, one might just perform one of them and be perfect. And there are examples of devotees just performing kirtan, just performing shravanam and becoming perfect. We can't use that as an excuse to say, I'll just do kirtan and not do kirtan like Sukadeva Goswami, or I'll just do shravanam and not do shravanam like Maharaj Parikshit, each of whom Parikshit Maharaj listened attentively, only, exclusively for 7 days, foregoing food and fasting, so he can become perfect with that kind of hearing. But not just I hear sometimes, that's that anga that I do. And you won't be protected. Sometimes we speak about how bhakti eradicates karma, and some of the statements seem very strong and powerful, and they think they seem to be very sometimes hard for devotees to reconcile. It doesn't seem like I'm freed from karma, but the bhakti is supposed to be freeing me from karma. But you have to question the extent to which someone's actually engaged in bhakti, in their thinking, in their moving, in their speaking. Is it being done for Krishna? Is it governed by one of the angas of bhakti and so forth? So when the Goswamis speak about faith only in bhakti and its efficacy being the entry level, then what does it mean to be an entry level bhakta? It means to be engaged in all of these activities for the pleasure of Krishna throughout your whole day. That's what it means. If you're not, to the extent that you're not, well, you're now you're in the realm of karma. Bhakti may be able to digest a little bit of that, but therefore there are different degrees of what it means to be a devotee. So anyway, that's an aside worth emphasizing. Why it doesn't seem to be working for some people, because they think I'm a devotee, I should be in ecstasy, I shouldn't be troubled by karma and so forth. But to what extent are we actually applying ourselves? That's an important question for every devotee to ask, especially for householders. If you study the Bhagavatam and see what description, for example, in the 7th canto of the householder's life is, it's really focused on becoming Krishna conscious, and along with having a family and so forth. It's not. It's very much about living simply and just according to what you need to keep body and soul together and so forth. It's quite a. I mean, this is a path of pursuing transcendence. So it's an easy path, relatively speaking, comparative to Gyan and yoga and so on and so forth. But it requires our entire being, so to speak, being applied if we expect to get the results. And otherwise, results will be coming in due course, and we may be pouring water and lighting a fire, and pouring water and lighting a fire, and plugging in and unplugging, plugging into the world, unplugging, plugging. So we kind of perpetuate the problem that we're trying to solve often. But at any rate, the point I'm making as an aside, but the overall point is that Swarup Shakti, Bhakti is constituted the Swarup Shakti, so she's in the sadhaka's life as well. But when that ingress of Swarup Shakti becomes very prominent, because the sadhaka has used his or her sadhaka deha, practitioner's body, completely in bhakti, body, mind, speech, and so forth, which in the whole range of human activities can be incorporated within. Obviously, serving the deity requires all of those things that we do normally, right, for Krishna. So actually doing that, then one progresses, right? And then the ingress of the Swarup Shakti becomes more and more prominent. And therefore it said, Shuddha Sattva Vishesha Prema Suryapsam Samyabhak. Bhava is such a measure of ingress of the Swarup Shakti that's now overriding the antakarana, the subtle body and the gross body of the devotee, that it said Bhava is this ingress. It's not that it's not there before, but now the ingress is very prominent. And Krishna makes his appearance. Now you're in the world of a spiritual emotion. Of everyone in that world is Krishna, some form of Krishna. So, so Krishna's appearing, as I say, wherever Bhakti is, which is the Swarup Shakti, Krishna has to go. So he's under her control. You can't find Krishna without his Swarup Shakti. Your question is Swarup Shakti manifesting Krishna? Is Krishna manifesting Swarup Shakti? It's kind of both. Swarup Shakti is within Krishna. It said he manifests externally as Radha, but it's not some point in time. And then the Swarup Shakti shows Krishna. But Krishna's form is you can argue it's constituted of Swarup Shakti. So I would give emphasis to the Swarup Shakti, to Bhakti, in terms of illuminating and bringing the darshan of Krishna into someone's life. Does that help?
Yeah, it does. Thank
Okay,
you.
stay engaged.
You appear very effulgent in the temple run this morning.
Yeah. Okay. It's some special effects, I'm sure.
Special. Archana, do you want to ask Karnam's question?
Yeah, and I actually have a question I want to ask for myself, if that's okay.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so I'll ask my question first. So in the Madhurya Kadambini, those 6 stages of Anishtabhajana Kriya, the ones in the initial enthusiasm, running hot and cold, creating possibilities, central distractions, valve failure, and riding the waves of bhakti. So I always had the sense that those were like symptoms of Anishtabhajana Kriya, but in the book, the devotee who wrote the commentary, my mind's going blank right now, but he calls them stages. And so I always think of a stage as being something that we kind of have to go through to progress, just like the stages of bhakti. So any thoughts about that? Because
I never looked at them as stages per se. That's the insight of
not the doxology.
he's basically talking about different psychological conditions that are getting in the way of one's ability to practice without interruption, without consistency. And there may be other psychological, vision as well that arise. I think that he was, he's a later theologian from the founding acharyas, and he's taking into consideration things that he's seen that weren't taken into consideration by the early writers. Write about it, give the teaching, and then people practice it, and then things show up, and you see something, and so you can comment on it later on. So he's doing something like that with a number of his books and so forth, and that as well, which would indicate, as I said, there may be other type of psychological type of conditions that get in the way. I mean, his are all directly, obviously, in relation to bhakti itself. Thinking.
He froze.
Did he froze? Did he freeze?
Yeah.
Oh, wait. Can you just repeat the last few minutes, the last minute you said, because you froze for a second?
Yeah, so can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah. So there may be all of the psychological states that he lists there, all in relation to bhakti, like, for example, thinking one's more advanced than one is because one's learned a few things and doesn't realize how deep the path is, or thinking, should I get married? Should I renounce? And back and forth, back and forth, and back and forth on these thoughts, and wasting a lot of mental energy over. When in fact, on either path, when you make and go for it. So there may be other such psychological states or conditions in relation to bhakti that one could, bring up in the present, for example, also. But I never looked at those as stages that one has to go through. Their conditions that someone might suffer from. One might not suffer from utsahamai, being full of enthusiasm based on thinking that I'm more advanced than I am, that because I've understood the practice 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 108, when it's actually much deeper than one realizes and so forth. That's fairly common, but not everybody necessarily has to go through that. So I wouldn't look at them as necessary stages, but as conditions that one might be affected by psychologically that would get in the way, and to acknowledge them, to recognize them for what they are, and deal with them, accordingly. I think that's the idea there. Does that help, Archon?
Yeah, no, definitely.
Okay.
Yeah, that's kind of how I was thinking about it before, and then when he used that word stages, it kind of threw me off, and I thought, because that would mean that's progressive to,
Yeah.
so if I'm feeling battle failure, which is like the next to the last stage, I wouldn't think that would be a higher, getting closer to the goal, but maybe, I don't know. So that was the reason for the question. And then this is a question from Karnamita. And he says, it seems that many devotees are confused about Shaktivesha avatars. I understand them to be empowered with a certain potency of the Lord and a jiva, but it seems not always that sometimes the Lord takes position, sometimes the Lord takes a position, if I remember correctly. Prabhupada called Parashuram the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So how far do we take that as a jiva? So, and so like the guru is God in a representational form, but is also a devotee. So Parashuram has the power and strength to kill the Kshatriyas 21 times. And according to Vishwanath Chakrabarti Thakur, he is also omniscient. And yet that omniscience seems conditional or not completely. In the case of our Prabhupada being called a Shaktivesha avatar to spread Krishna consciousness all over the planet, how far should we take that empowerment, as he sometimes seems to know what the devotees were thinking or needed to hear, but in other ways, he relied on us to help him understand certain things. So your thoughts on this?
Yeah, there are different types of Shaktivesha avatar explained by the Goswamis. And one is when Vishnu himself, so to speak, incarnates, one of his own powers incarnates. And so he's God himself embodying one of his powers, like Gyan Shakti or Bhakti Shakti or something to that effect. And then there's evil who becomes empowered by one of those potencies of God, his potency of knowledge or bhakti, or there's Palana Shakti in the case of the ruling power, and so forth. So two types. And with regard to the latter, when a jiva becomes empowered by Bhagavan, that empowerment can also appear for a certain period of time, and it can also recede. And that was the case with Parashuram also, who your husband mentions. So at a certain point, his power was removed, and I think he was defeated by Ram in battle. So that's a type of empowerment that can come and go at the Lord's discretion. There's also a kind of a vaish or empowerment described in Chaitanya Charitamrita. Also, I think Nrsimha Chaitanya, I think was his name, devotee of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was appearing in, and but that was temporary. So, so I think that when the power, if you will, of Bhagavan is predominant in a person, then we honor him that in terms of the power. So as Bhagavan. So for example, Parashuram is listed as one of the 10 avatars. There's more than 10, but sometimes 10 are selected out. And even though he is his was an empowerment that didn't last. So, you know, we look at him in that phase when he's empowered. And that said, the idea that Prabhupada is a Shaktivesh avatar is a term that I believe that Pujapad Sridhar Maharaj used in a generous way. And he concluded that Prabhupada was empowered by Nityananda Prabhu to do extraordinary seva. And that would be kind of an empowerment for a particular seva that Prabhupada prayed for the power to be able to render to his guru that could and would at a certain point recede. But I don't think that I wouldn't look at it so literally. I would look at it more that that's a generous use of the term Shaktivesh, but that he was given a special power by Nityananda Prabhu to do his work is unquestionable. I think his work was extraordinary, and Sridhar Maharaj was able to make the comparison. We weren't able to make the comparison because we only met Prabhupada in that stage. Pujapad Sridhar Maharaj analyzed, knew him well, lived with him, and so on and so forth, lived in Prabhupada's, with Prabhupada as his host for 6 years, knew him on a very intimate terms. When he saw him return, and if you're a very analytical person, Pujapad Sridhar Maharaj, when he saw Prabhupada return from India, visited him, and so forth, he started putting things together. He saw what had happened. He saw his disciples, and he saw something in Prabhupada that, while he was unassuming in his nature as usual, still there was something extraordinary, vibrant in him that stood out to Sridhar Maharaj. And so this is part of his making his with kind of a bold statement when asked to say something in praise of Prabhupada after his disappearance. And I think that he used it more broadly than it's used in the scripture, where we designate someone that's the way I look at it. And I think that going to the other extreme and looking at Prabhupada as a Shaktivesh avatar in all respects is not the best idea. I think that and that Prabhupada tends to be, by some of his disciples, distinguished from everyone in the past, anyone who could come in the future, and so on and so forth. And it's just not accurate, and that's not taking anything away from him. But it's an analysis that lacks glorification. That's accurate in terms of what he did in time and place. That is extraordinary and historical, and so forth. And we could talk about all day and night. But the more you make him godlike, that's his worst nightmare, in a sense. Not that his devotees will turn into Mayavadis, saying that their guru is God. And I doubt that could happen, given his emphasis on that side of the teaching. But to fan the flames of fanaticism is problematic. So I think it's a more loosely looked at a little bit more loosely. He was empowered by Nityananda Prabhu, who was particularly empowered by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to Tal class, and those who were rejected from the society of Varnashram and so forth in Bengal. That was his work. Prabhupada's work is similar, analogous. And he established Gurunatai deities everywhere, which Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur didn't do, for example. So the influence of Nityananda was prominent in his life, and so on. But I wouldn't make him synonymous with Nityananda Prabhu, for example. So anyway, I look at the term as more generous and broad, rather than a real refined theological statement. Avesh is a broad term. Empowered by God's potency. Which potency? Now you come up with Nityananda Avesh. Well, that would be a new term in itself. The Sridhar Maharaj kind of created. I mean, of course, he has power, Nityananda Prabhu, and he could empower someone to do something, and he did have empowered associates in his time, and so on and so forth. But I would like to add Prabhupada's name to the list of, Shaktivesh avatars, so to speak. I wouldn't look at it like that, and I don't think that Sridhar Maharaj, meant it in that way. But for lack of another term, empowered, by the potency of Nityananda. To some extent, Nityananda was living in him, something like that. In great measure for his work. But he himself was, unassuming, speak in an unassuming way, and he'd speak about his accomplishments and so forth. But overall, he was unassuming, and he imposed himself as being omniscient, which comes up in Karnamrita's questions. Omniscient in all respects. Does that help? Well, I guess.
Yeah, and I'm sure he'll be really happy with that answer.
Okay.
Yeah, it was interesting. Let me see who else has a question. I think so. Mahara has a question.
Good morning, Swami.
Good morning.
I have a few questions, but I don't know if there'll be time. But I was reading in the Bhagavatam 10:27-28, Sanatan Goswami and Jiva Goswami. They said that the assistants, and was interesting to me because I never heard this, but the assistants of the Lord, the cowherds, were not present at the time when Indra secretly met with Krishna after he committed his offense to Krishna. And thus, it says, thus they did not know about this event because the cowherds did not speak about it. It was not well known in Braj. In the Padma Purana, it says this this happened, in another kalpa, the cowherds along with Mother Jasoda and Nanda Maharaj were there. So that was interesting. But my question is mostly about why, like when Krishna takes the post of Indra, what happens at that time? Because I don't think he would do what Indra did. Is there that pastime? Does that pastime take place?
Well, all the pastimes don't have to take place in the same way, or
Yeah.
We're not bound by history, but how they were performed in the past and so forth.
Okay. Okay, that makes sense.
If God took the place of Indra, I don't think Krishna takes the place of Indra, but Vishnu might take the place of Indra. Or Vishnu might take the place of Brahma. I don't think it's actually Krishna doing that.
Oh, yeah.
Split, theological hairs there. But with regard to that pastime, the spirit of that really is that Indra came to apologize And if I come to apologize to you and you're sitting with all of your associates, it's a little harder for me to do so. All of them are upset with me as well. And maybe they're more upset with me than you are, because they're offended by the fact that I have offended their object of love and so forth. So to make it easy on Indra, Krishna separated himself from the greater group of cowherds and met with Indra, who was accompanied by other gods, offered gifts and so forth. And Indra bathed him and crowned him as the king of the god of gods, and so forth. Gave him the name Govinda, or some Puranas is the name Upendra. And so to make it easy on Indra, and then Indra's prayers are there, you can hear them, you can read them in the Bhagavatam. But I think that, I'm quite sure that Jiva Goswami and Gopal Champu has the cowherd boys seeing that something going on from a distance. And of course, when Krishna comes back from there, he's got all these gifts that the gods have given him, and they're curious for all the cowherds to see regal dress and gift from every god, so to speak, and being in their own minds equals with Krishna. They take some of the gifts out of his hand and start wearing them themselves, and so forth. And they're parading on back to Vrindavan, dressed in all this attire of these that the gods have given to Krishna. And they're quite a sight then when they return to Nandagram, and some explanation is required. So the cowherds will offer some explanation, and as to where these things came from and so forth. And like some guy with 5 heads came and did this, some guy with 4 heads did that, and then Nanda Maharaj would think to something like, well, whatever, these cowherd boys telling all kinds of stories, and just forget about the fact that they have all this paraphernalia and so forth, and carry on with the human-like Leela and so on. So it's a very nice account given there by Jiva Goswami and Gopal Champu of their awareness from a distance. So different ways it may be described by the same Acharya at different times.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. And Mitra was wondering how come samadhi is, there's a few definitions for it. Samadhi can be either deeply absorbed or where someone's buried, or there's the pushpa samadhi. Why do they have the same names? The burial site and the being deeply absorbed, going into trance. Why is that?
Well, the idea is there that when a person enters into samadhi, once and for all, it's thought, let's say the Acharya enters into samadhi once and for all, then he retires, Krishna retires him from the world, and then so he is honoring of that state, the last state that we found him in this world is being preserved, so to speak, and honored. Therefore, the tomb or whatever is called a samadhi. It's an honoring of his state of samadhi. The state of samadhi would be such in bhakti that his body becomes spiritualized, so to speak. And so to honor the body, rather than cremate it, which is normally done for those who die, to preserve the body as best one can, and put it in a tomb, and that becomes a place of worship. So therefore, it's called a samadhi, a samadhi tomb, honoring his samadhi, something to that effect would be the idea. Now, it's not that every acharya has his body placed in samadhi in that respect. In fact, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was cremated, perhaps by his own desire, stated desire. I'm not sure, but it was. And then, of course, the ashes were placed there. But it's been characteristic to preserve the body. At least I heard that the other day. I think that's accurate. Anyway, that's the. Hello?
Oh, sorry, I didn't hear the last few seconds that you said.
I was just explaining that the samadhis is the honoring of the perfection, so to speak, spiritualization of the sadhu's form. That's a state of samadhi. So we honor that state by preserving it in a tomb and making it a place of worship. So it's really honoring the samadhi, the state of samadhi, in a physical way, giving a physical form to the state of samadhi that it may be perpetually honored.
Yeah,
Well,
thank you. That was really nice. Thank you.
okay.
And then I just read today that in the section where the cow herders are going inside the lake, and the Lake of Brahman, it's called by Jiva Goswami, and
Lake of what?
they call it the Lake of Brahman. It's where they got to see the Brahman. They got to realize Brahman in the lake when they went inside. And so it said in there that Akrura, who caused suffering by separating them from the gopis and the Brajavasis from Krishna, had seen the Lake of Brahman by Gyan, whereas the cowherds saw it by their eyes. Thus they were greater, it says. But I didn't realize that. Of course, this could be like what you were explaining for my last question, but that I thought Akrura actually saw I thought he saw Vaikuntha, and
Well, some of the commentators
says
said
that
he saw Vaikuntha. Yes, the Vaikuntha was revealed to him. He saw Krishna and Balaram as Vishnu and Anantasesh, example, and that he saw Vaikuntha. Whereas when Krishna took the cowherds there from Braj, and when they requested what would they be in their next life, he took them there, and then he showed them Goloka, Mahavaikuntha. So that's a difference often made between what was revealed to Akrura and what was revealed to the Brajbasis. Vaikuntha.
And Mahavaikuntha, yeah. But what does it mean by Gyan then? Because isn't that just knowledge? Like by knowledge he saw it? He didn't see it with his eyes, because they're saying the cowherds saw it with their eyes.
Good enough. Sounds good. There are different ways to distinguish. Like I said, I think the main point, there's a difference between what was revealed to Badura and what was revealed to the cowherd, given that Akrura is a Mathura devotee, so his bhakti is different than the bhakti of the Brajbasis themselves. So they also have a different experience of transcendence.
Okay, yeah. Thank you. You're helpful, because otherwise I'd take everything literally. So it's great to have you helping.
Okay, glad to be of service.
So
Time, huh?
I think we're out of time.
Okay.
Good questions and good answers. Thank you.
Next week. Hare Krishna.
Okay. Arivo. Bye.